South Africans who have resettled in the United States, they're now making themselves feel at home there. There's been widespread response, reaction, and criticism from across the United States political aisle. From the Episcopal Church, who says we're no longer going to be helping the United States administration with resettling refugees because they believe that the South Africans who were resettled in the United States don't qualify for refugee status. You even have hawkish Republican types questioning, why are we paying for chartered planes and the fast tracking of citizenship for foreign nationals to our country? So widespread response to Donald Trump. But there's also been a response from those who work in immigration, those who work with the multilateral bodies like the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, saying that Donald Trump's plan to accept South Africans, white Afrikaans speaking South Africans, it goes against the internationally accepted protocols and how you define someone who is a asylum seeker or someone seeking refugee status. Professor Loren Landau is a professor of migration and development at the University of Oxford, also teaches at Wits University's Africa Center for Migration and Society. Thanks so much for joining us, Loren. Really appreciate your time. What is Donald Trump's acceptance, its offer, and then also resettlement of South African, white Afrikaans speaking South Africans say about how Donald Trump sees not only the global refugee system, but also the U.S. refugee system?
Good morning. Clearly, his effort here is to send a message that the United States doesn't want refugees, real refugees, whether they're from Gaza or Ukraine or Afghanistan, even those who collaborated with the US in the war there, but really sees the refugee system, like he sees the immigration system in the United States, as a chance to rekindle and reaffirm the position of white people in the country. So while he's busy trying to deport millions of black and brown people, he's welcoming in a group of people who historically, at least, I'm not saying anything about these individuals, but historically have been associated with white supremacy.
So this is Donald Trump's response to the MAGA myth of the white replacement theory.
Yes, this is very much his idea that immigration is an effort to dilute white power, that there's institutions within the United States, higher education institutions, parts of the government itself that are anti-Christian and anti-white. And this is part of his symbolic effort to show that he is going to fight that he is the savior.
Loren, where does this white persecution complex come from? And further, where does this Christian persecution complex come from? I've been reading and I see these stories online from uncredited, unfamiliar news websites that could easily be clickbait websites. And then I see and I trawl through social media and I see the tweets and posts on an apparent attack on Christians around the world. I don't necessarily see it. I don't read it in the mainstream, whether left or right leaning newspapers or media, but it seems to be a thread out there that if you're white and if you're Christian, you're somewhat being targeted. But targeted by who?
Right. I mean, he would, of course, reply that you're part of the mainstream media, and of course, you're hiding this truth from the people. But this is a myth in the United States that goes back into the 1920s, if not before. It's part of what fed the Ku Klux Klan and the other kind of efforts and the strong Nazi sympathy actually in the United States before World War II. So this is something that has been circulating. It resonates with some of the kind of myths that we hear in South Africa also about white replacement, white genocide. It is precisely this. It is a myth, but it's a story people tell themselves to justify separation and to justify persecution.
Loren, what is the signal that has been sent by a Donald Trump administration to the world on where the US stands on questions of race, but also equity?
Right. I mean, there's a message obviously being sent to South Africa here about transformation and about the need, or how he sees it, the need to protect white privilege and white position in South Africa. And I think that's part of the same message he's sending to the rest of the world, that hands off Christians, hands off white people. We will use the power of the United States to punish you if we see you as violating those kind of that's the sanctity of whiteness. And we will invite people into the United States to protect them if need be. He's also sending a message to those who are suffering, looking for protection, that they won't get it from the United States and maybe from anyone else. You have to be part of this chosen few to be worthy of protection.
What are the dangers of Donald Trump's plan and how he sees migration, but also he sees the status of refugees and asylum seekers? Around the world, you are seeing a pushback in from developed countries of people fleeing some sort of real persecution, real economic tumult, real war and disaster. You even have a Labour Party government in the UK at the moment saying we're going to completely relook at how we accept people seeking refugee or asylum status. What impact could Donald Trump's move have on the global system of migration and people fleeing from home countries with real disaster, real war, real persecution after them?
Right. Of course, Donald Trump's actions, as kind of ridiculous and absurd as they are part of a broader arc that's been going on for the last 10, 20 years of parties and politicians saying that immigration is out of control. Immigration will undermine the nations, the citizenry, and putting harsher and harsher measures to try to stop people from crossing borders. We've seen that in the recent elections in South Africa, where almost all of the parties took very strong anti-immigration lines. We've seen that in the United States, as you mentioned, in the UK, Australia, elsewhere. I think what this does, when it comes from the most powerful country in the world, is really say that is okay. That it is okay to reject refugees, even if they're suffering. That it is okay to exclude those who don't look like the majority of the countries. And in the US, in the past, the US has been imperfect, but at least a voice for tolerance, a voice in favor of human rights. And without that voice, I think it opens up space for the kind of nationalist, populist sentiments that unfortunately we're seeing are now so common around the world.
Yeah, I want you to put on your political scientist hat on now, Loren, with a listener asking, there's a big worry at the moment in the UK. That is why reform is so popular. Yes, we've had MAGA moments in the United States. Yes, we have a right-wing party having some sort of plurality in German elections. But you see in France, where the right wing has been isolated. You look at elections in Canada, the Conservative Party being isolated, the populist Conservative Party in Canada. You look at Australia, that also tried to make the Liberal Party in Australia trying to make Australia great again, also losing out in elections. So what does it say? In some parts of the world, we're seeing populist, anti-migrant, anti-diversity parties growing, but in other parts of the world, you're not seeing that.
Well, I think if we look at all those cases that you mentioned, and it's true, we're lucky that they didn't win. But if you look even the Canada election, it was very close. You look at the German election, the French election, it took a unified opposition to get these parties suppressed. If we went back 10, 15 years, the messages that those parties were saying would have had them thrown out of politics. It would have been a scandal. Similarly, in South Africa, some of the language that we hear from some of the parties, the xenophobic language, the anti-immigrant language, would have been deemed intolerable. The fact that these people have made these gains and are on the verge of winning and might still win in the next round is something that I think we have to be worried about. We can take some comfort in the fact that people have stood up and said, no, not in our name. We will come together and fight this and promote tolerance, promote diversity, promote inclusion. But I don't think that we can say just because they didn't win in the UK or Canada or Australia that this threat is gone.
Yeah, you're right. In South Africa, since the 2016 local government elections, we've seen the rise of narrow identity-based parties, and those particular parties have largely espoused, in South Africa, particularly xenophobic rhetoric. But really appreciate your time, Professor Loren Landau, who is a professor in migration and society at Oxford University. Thanks so much for joining us.